In Rome's lawless ghetto, a deadly trap has been set. The prey is 22-year-old nobleman Juan Borgia. Knives are plunged into his head and torso, and his throat is slit. It's a brutal new chapter in the astonishing story of Juan's family, the Borgias. Famed for their power, violence, and decadence, they even inspired the creation of The Godfather. But these aren't exactly gangsters. Juan's father is the Pope himself. His brother, a cardinal, and Juan was commander of the papal armies. So just who would dare kill one of the all-powerful Borgias?
I want to start my detective work by going back to the scene of the crime, the back streets of Renaissance Rome. What clues can we pick up here about who killed Juan Borgia? In 1497, this city was run by Juan's father, Pope Alexander VI. A very different pope to today's model. Not just head of the church, he also ruled central Italy like a king. And despite his vows of chastity, he had numerous lovers and fathered at least 8 children. Juan had been his favourite. Now I want to retrace that favourite son's final steps. So I've enlisted the help of local historian Alicia Larossi. Hello, you must be Alicia.
Hello, Susie.
We met by a house said to be the scene of Juan's Last Supper. So Juan came and had dinner with his mother?
With his mother and with his brother Cesare. Late in the night, the guests left in small groups. Juan, he left with the groom, servant, despite the others that recommended him to get an armed escort.
The brothers left together. Then Juan headed for the Jewish ghetto. It seems really quite foolish to go off into the dark night down these little back streets. I mean, why did he do it?
Juan was very arrogant. He was the son of the Pope.
Yeah, so as far as he's concerned, he's invincible.
Yes.
Next, Juan split up from his groom. It was a bad move for both of them.
Papal guard found in this area the groom mortally wounded.
What had happened?
He had been stabbed.
And so what about Juan?
There was no news of Juan.
Juan had vanished. The next day, a very anxious pope launched an investigation. That unearthed a boatman who had seen a body thrown into the river Tiber the night Juan disappeared.
The Pope summoned up about 300 fishermen and swimmers. On June 16th, the body of Juan was found. This is a Cinque Dea, and probably he was stabbed with this weapon, and he hadn't been robbed.
So it was clearly an assassination?
Yes, it was clearly an assassination.
The body of Juan Borgia had been dumped in the Tiber like a piece of rubbish. Who on earth had decided to take on Rome's godfather?
Organised hits, bodies flung into water. This murder has more than a hint of mafia-style war in Renaissance Rome.
From the moment Juan went missing, Rome was in uproar. No one quite knew what was going to happen next. Shops battened down their hatches and great families retreated to their fortified palaces for fear that this was just the beginning of a violent storm.
The Borgia family were expected to seek brutal revenge. But against whom?
Now this is Palazzo Sforza Cesarini. It was built by Juan Borgia's father, but when he became Pope, the powerful Sforza family moved in.
Their boss was Ascanio Sforza, once the Pope's number 2. But now the pair had fallen out. So could the head of this house be behind the killing? To find out, I'm meeting Professor Robert Black.
A couple of days before the murder, there had been a quarrel between a servant of Juan Borgia and a servant of Cardinal Ascanio Sforza. Juan Borgia's servant had been killed in this quarrel, and then Cardinal Ascanio Sforza's servant had been seized by the Borgia and hanged summarily.
So it's quite serious. I mean, there's quite a lot of retaliation there.
Quite a lot of retaliation.
Juan and Ascanio were also seen arguing violently. The Rome rumour mill made Ascanio Sforza prime suspect.
Were there other immediate suspects?
An important group were the various husbands or families of Juan Borgia's lovers. Juan Borgia wasn't much of a soldier. He wasn't much of anything, but he was a big lover.
So there's a suspicion that his playing away might have caught up with him.
That's right, but this was his principal interest in life.
For 3 days, the Pope's investigators scoured Rome, searching this palace and others for evidence. Then he called a public meeting at the Vatican.
He started going through all the people who he felt had not done the murder, including Sforza. And he went through this long list.
So he's very public about who he rules out, who he says is beyond reproach on this.
That's right. But he very pointedly did not mention the Orsini.
The Orsini family were huge regional rivals of the Borgias. They owned castles dangerously close to Rome, and just 3 years earlier had sided against the Pope in war.
He believed it was the Orsini, and I think he believed that right from the beginning.
If Robert is right, then the killing of Juan Borgia was just one more deadly episode in an ongoing turf war. Fought not by gangsters, but by noblemen, cardinals, and the Pope.
Pope Alexander never did charge anyone for the murder of his favourite son, Juan Borgia. But that's not to say he didn't know who the killers were and where they lived.
This is the former HQ of the Orsini family. Here in the year leading up to Juan's death, the Orsini were severely provoked by the Borgias. Provoked into murder, according to Professor Marco Pellegrini.
So Marco, this is a very impressive fresco. Who or what are we seeing here?
Virginio Orsini, the most important figure on horseback. He was in command of the whole region north of Rome.
From this mighty castle, the Orsini's leader dominated the area. But the Pope wanted Virginio out of the way.
Alexander VI thought that simply by beheading the Orsini family, the problem was to be solved. You eliminate the chief and you eliminate the whole family.
So what happens to Virginio?
Virginio was captured on the battlefield and he mysteriously died in jail. The general conviction was that he was killed on the order of Pope Alexander VI.
This alone sounds like a motive for the Orsini to strike at the Borgias. But there's more. Months after Virginio's death, the Pope ordered a military assault here on the Orsini stronghold. Leading the papal armies was Juan Borgia himself.
Joe, Look over the edge.
Okay.
There is a sign of a cannon blow.
Oh, yeah.
It must have been done between November 1496 and January 1497.
So it makes a mark,
Yes.
but it doesn't break through.
No, because the wall was so tough that they would resist gunfire.
So how effective was the siege?
The siege failed, and during this battle, Juan Borgia was not only defeated, but wounded. So he had to go back to Rome, covered with shame. He proved to be absolutely nothing as a military commander.
The Orsini had motives to attack the Borgias, but this siege and this battle, that's reason to go after Juan.
Yes, he was in charge of the papal army, so he was responsible for this attack. Acts of violence required retaliations, bloody retaliations. They were provoked to death through this attack to the Bracciano castle.
The Orsini were clearly not short of reasons to strike out against the Borgias.
They wanted revenge for Virginio's death. They'd been attacked by Juan and the papal armies, and they were the closest geographical rivals. They had to strike out to protect themselves against the Pope's designs on their lands and their castle.
We can't say for sure who killed Juan Borgia, but there's a very strong case that this was an Orsini hit.